My daughter won't speak to me, not much anyway. I bring meals to her bedroom, tiptoeing. My fingertips never quite touch the door to nudge it open, only the atoms between me and the solid oak. I ask if she's hungry, and big hazel eyes that used to wrinkle at the corners with hysterical laughter now narrow at me harshly. She turns her attention back to a drawing of two small girls, and I know exactly who they are. Is that you and Mindy? I ask, and she frowns, never looking up. I brought you both a plate. I sit one off to the side of my daughter's workspace and one in front of an empty chair. Mindy wants to know if you put something in it, she says. And for a fraction of a second, my blood boils. And so I walk away. Yes, my 11-year-old daughter Elise has an imaginary friend. Not still has one, she's new. She arrived after her father went away this year, and I've done my best to accept it. But things took an ugly turn when Mindy decided she was afraid of me, and because of this, my daughter went cold. When I'd approach Elise, she'd look over to the place where Mindy was supposed to be with a look of concern. What's wrong, Mindy? She'd ask. She pretended to listen intently to her friend before giving me a scornful look. Mindy doesn't feel safe around you. Can you leave us alone? Elise, come on, I said, bottling my concern and forcing ease into my words. If you'd like to be alone, just tell me that, okay? Her gaze was empty and unflinching. I no longer knew how to respond. 3 nights ago, I awoke to the sound of whimpering and crying from my daughter's bedroom. I moved quickly up the stairs to check, unease growing with each step. The wooden floor in front of Elise's bedroom door creaked beneath my feet, and the crying stopped immediately. I pushed the door open and found my daughter cross-legged on her bed without a single tear in her eyes. Her eyebrows raised slightly as if to ask what I wanted. What's going on? I heard crying. Mindy was upset. She's fine. I took care of it. You took care of it? Oh, I said, choosing my words carefully. How did you manage to calm her so quickly? Elise looked over to the foot of her bed, a knowing smile growing on her face before she started laughing loudly, throwing her head back and reaching her hand over to a spot on the bed as if to place it on top of Mindy's, as if sharing an inside joke with a friend. I took a step through the doorway. No, Elise shouted. Don't come near her. She's scared of you. You're making it bad again. With my hand over my mouth, I stepped backwards through the doorframe. I walked away with tears in my eyes, the sting of rejection blending with a growing fear for and of my daughter. I worked through the weekend. I stayed nearly motionless at my desk in the living room, watching. She moved through her day normally, chatting with her friend here and there and always grabbing 2 snacks at a time. She'd ignore me when I looked at her, but more than once I'd see her from my peripheral, shielding her lips with a cupped hand as if whispering in Mindy's ear. She'd giggle, looking right at me, but I never shifted my gaze. As I got into bed last night, exhausted and with the vague threat of a headache coming on, I felt a lump on my mattress. As I shifted, it both flexed and braced against my back. I searched for it with my hand and pressed my fingers into it. It yielded oddly, like slender sticks encased in a sheath. I quickly pulled the covers back to find a black bird petrified in a small pool of blood. I kicked the covers off my feet and stormed into my daughter's room. Darting down the dark hallway and climbing the stairs 2 at a time, I imagine I may have looked as scary as Mindy claimed I was. I shoved the bedroom door open and watched my daughter flinch as the doorknob slammed against the adjacent wall. Mom, she said softly, and tucked her red journal underneath her on the carpet. Did you... Elise? I pressed my shaking hand onto my forehead and squeezed my eyes shut. Did you put that in my bed? What? She said softly. Did you? A creaking, droning sound coming from the closet gave me pause. I lowered my voice to a whisper. What is that? Elise shrugged. The childish nervousness on her face cut into me. I stepped towards the closet, and Elise belted a high-pitched scream. No, you can't go near her. Get out. I crouched down to her level and firmly grasped her hands. They were so cold. Elise, please, can we just... She wrenched her hands away from mine, a searing look of contempt on her face. Get out, she said. My chest burned with her rejection, but I slowly stood, towering over her. What's in the journal, Elise? I crossed my arms and glared fearfully at my child. She pressed her leg firmly on the red cover. I lunged towards the book. and she shifted her body on top of it, covering it like a shell. I could hear her scratching furiously on the pages with the pen as I desperately tried to squeeze my arm into the fortress she'd become. I gave up, sitting back onto the floor. Elise was making sobbing noises, her back heaving gently as she remained folded over the journal. I guessed there were no tears falling from her eyes. I didn't sleep. I waited. Sitting against the wall in the dark hallway outside her bedroom, I waited. By 3 a.m., Elise was snoring softly. I crept back into her room, anticipating and avoiding each creaky spot on the old familiar floor. The deep red of the journal peeked out from beneath Elise's pillow. Time slowed to a near stop as I slid the heavy book from beneath her sleeping head. Journal in my hand, the creaking, droning sound radiated from the closet again. My heart pounding, I braced myself and inched towards the closet. I slid the door open and found it empty other than Elise's tablet lying on the floor, softly illuminating the small space. I quickly disabled the alarm set for 3:03 a.m. and opened the settings to find the alarm set to ghostly whisper. Why? Why would she? I looked over to a sleeping Elise. For a moment, I saw the version of her I knew before Mindy, the contours of her side profile somehow still identical to the tattered sonogram stored away in my top drawer. Her soft snoring was like white noise in an otherwise dark and oppressive space. The unused pillow next to her seemed almost concave with the weight of someone's head. Had she moved from one side to the other in her sleep? I pressed my fingertips into its center, and a searing doom engulfed my chest. I wrenched my hand away and slipped down to my office. I set the journal down and opened to the page Elise had scratched out. I slowly ran my finger across the lined paper, feeling for the indented shape of words below the scribbles. Desperation strained my eyes and my hands trembled. A jolt of panic shook me upright when the deep groaning sound rumbled from just behind me. "Damn it," I muttered, clumsily swiping away at the tablet to disable the alarm set for 3:13, praying Elise wouldn't hear it. I pressed my finger along my daughter's written text again, holding the journal up and towards the dim desk lamp. I came across a section smoother than the rest where the scribbles hadn't totally overlapped with the words, where the faint shapes of letters still peeked through the mess. A faint screech came from upstairs, the sound of a body's weight lifting from an old bed frame. I crouched down as quietly as I could and scooted beneath my desk, journal in hand. I reached for the tablet and hovered it over the journal for whatever light I could get. I knew what I looked like, scrunched up with my eyes practically touching the journal's pages, desperate, pathetic. Pinpointing the exposed text finally, I whispered what I could make out. "She's starting to break." My chest tightened as I heard a soft shuffle near the stairs.
"Mommy?"
A distorted, sickly sweet voice whispered. I peered under the desk. 2 bare feet stood on the bottom step. I craned my neck and peered up at Elise, her eyes dark and cold inside her tilted head. Her smile beamed in the moonlight. Her arm was swinging. My eyes cautiously traced from her frenzied face down her slender arm to find grasped in her hand a small black object, spewing small drops of crimson liquid onto the floor. A single black feather drifted down into the dark puddle. My inhales felt thick and smothering, like breathing in smoke. Elise. She stood motionless, a twitching smile stretching grotesquely on her face. My chest buckled and my breathing became reckless and uncontrolled. "Ellie," I managed to whisper. Her irises traveled sickeningly up into her skull, exposing a glassy white so bright it was nearly blue in the darkness. As if it were formed from lead, she lurched one leg forward and swayed briefly from the imbalance. I recoiled quietly, pushing my spine painfully into the leg of the desk. Elise took 2 rapid steps forward and giggled softly. Cowering with my arms shielding my head, I retreated to a better time. "She's just a little girl. She's still your little girl." "She's a monster," I muttered. "She's just little Ellie Mae. Ellie Mae, what was it?" I saw her for an instant, in her father's police hat, his oversized shirt falling clumsily off her shoulder, standing on her stubby toes to peer out the window. She speaks severely into the TV remote.
"Need backup. Over?"
"Marshal Ellie Mae," I cry, my voice breaking. The smile vanished from Elisa's face. Her eyes seemed to vibrate frantically before her pupils anchored back to center. I felt her panic mirrored in my body as her eyes darted around rapidly, Her chest heaved and her breath was a ragged gasp.
Mommy, What happened?
She looked down at her blood-stained hands and whimpered as she wiped them harshly on her white nightgown. I beckoned for her with shaking hands, afraid to cross the threshold between us. Elise closed the distance and hugged me tightly. Her tiny heart hammered against me, and her tears soaked through my collar. I grabbed her tightly. "Ellie, we will figure it out. We'll go to the hospital, okay? A faint screech came from upstairs, the sound of a body's weight lifting from an old bed frame.